thoracoappendicular muscles. Posterior thoracoappendicular muscles. Starting with the trapezius, which is up here. That'll just be for my own personal memory. The origin of the trapezius, the descending part is the occipital bone, spinous process of C1 and C7. I don't remember where the occipital bone is. Spinous processes are the little points going out on each of your vertebrae. So C1 through C7 is the cervical spine. The transverse part of the origin is the aponeurosis at T1 through T4 spinous processes. The ascending part of the origin is the spinous process of T5 through T12. The insertion of the trapezius, the descending part, is the clavicle, the lateral 1/3 of it. The transverse part is the acromion, and the ascending part is the scapular spine. Innervation of the trapezius, spinal accessory nerve, which is cranial nerve 11. The action of the trapezius is to steady the scapula on thorax. The descending part of the trapezius draws the scapula obliquely upward and rotates the glenoid cavity superiorly. It also tilts the head to the same side and rotates it to the opposite side. The transverse part's action draws the scapular medially, and the ascending part's action draws scapular medially downward. The next muscle is the latissimus dorsi, your lats. It's like lower on your back and on the sides, I think. The origin, there's several. The vertebral part originates at the spinous process of T7 through T12, and the thoraculolumbar, I can't read, thoracolumbar fascia. Man, I knew this should have happened. The scapular part originates at the inferior angle of the scapula, and the costal part originates at the ribs 9 through 12, and the iliac part originates at the iliac crest, the posterior 1/3 of it. The lats insert at the crest of the lesser tuberosity of the humerus, the anterior angle. Your humerus is the bone of your arm. So up here would be where the lesser tuberosity is, I guess. Innervation of the lat is the thoracodorsal nerve, which is where it connects to C6 and C8. C6, C7, and C8. Again, cervical spine. The action of the lats is to internally rotate, adduct, extend, and respiration. It's your cough muscles. Next up, the levator scapulae. It originates at the transverse process of C1 through C4. It inserts at the scapula, the superior angle. Scapula are also known as your shoulder blades. The innervation of the levator scap is dorsal scapular nerve, C5 and C6, and the action draws the scapula medially upward while moving inferior angle medially. It also inclines neck to the same side. Oh god, my whole table just fell. I caught it, but I was scared. Okay, rhomboid minor is next. It originates at the spinous processes of C6 and C7. It inserts at the medial border of scapula above the scapular spine. It innervates, the innervation, dorsal scapular nerve, C4 and C5. And the action, it steadies the scapula and draws the scapula medially upward. By doing this, it retracts the scapula and tilts the glenoid cavity inferiorly. Rhomboid major. It originates at the spinous process of T1 through T4 vertebrae, your thoracic vertebrae. It inserts at the medial border of scapula below the scapular spine. And the innervation is the dorsal scapular nerve, which comes from C4 and C5. The actions: steady the scapula, draw the scapula medially upward. It also retracts scapula until, it's the same. It's pretty much the same as the rhomboid minor. No, it is literally the same. All right, we're still overall in the muscles of the back, but we have entered a slightly new region. Now we're at the scapulohumeral muscles. So the first one would be the deltoid, and it originates at the clavicular part, originates at the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle. The acromial part comes from the acromion, and the spinal part comes from the scapular spine. It inserts at the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The innervation comes from the axillary nerve, which comes from C5 and C6. And the actions: the clavicular part causes flexion, internal rotation, and adduction. The acromial part causes abduction, and the spinal part causes extension, external rotation, and adduction. And we have teres major. It originates from the inferior angle of the scapula. It inserts at the crest of the lesser tuberosity of the humerus, the anterior angle. The lower subscapular nerve innervates it, coming from C5 through C7. And the action: it causes internal rotation, adduction, and extension. Then we have the supraspinatus. It originates from the supraspinatus fossa of the scapula. It inserts at the greater tuberosity of the humerus. The innervation comes from the suprascapular nerve, which comes from C4 and through C6. And the action it provides is abduction. Then we have the infraspinatus. It originates from the infraspinatus fossa of the scapula. It inserts at the greater tuberosity of the humerus as well. The innervation comes from the suprascapular nerve, C4 through C6 as well. And the action is external rotation. Then we have teres minor. The origin of teres minor comes from the lateral border of the scapula. It inserts at the greater tuberosity of the humerus. The innervation is caused by the axillary nerve from C5 and C6. And the action is external rotation and weak adduction. And then the final one of the back, the back of this section, is the subscapularis, which originates from the I think that's supposed to be subscapular fossa. Probably, well, it might be. It says subcapular fossa of scapulae, but I think it's probably subscapular fossa of the scapula. It inserts at the lesser tuberosity of the humerus. The innervation is caused by the lower and upper subscapular nerves from C5 and C6, and the action is internal rotation. So that would be all of the muscles from, what was that, the back, superficial back or something? That's all the superficial back and scapular region muscles.